People like to say the Voting Rights Act of 1965 was born in the streets. I disagree. It was written in Washington for Washington. If you look at it, since 1965, who's benefited from it other than the Democratic Party? They don't value our voices. They just want our votes. Let's get into it.
Supreme Court just finished hearing arguments in a major Republican challenge to the Voting Rights Act. This is a case that could gut key provisions that prohibit racial discrimination in redistricting. Scripps News Washington correspondent Stephanie Liebergen joins us live now outside the court now with the details. And Stephanie, what just happened?
Hey, Del, good afternoon. Well, the justices are pretty much 2.5 hours of arguments that centers around Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act that, as you noticed, prohibits racial discrimination in redistricting and election laws and changes. The key question here that the justices were wrestling with is if there's a Section 2 violation in a state, how much can race play into any remedies or fixes that a state tries to make when they're trying to fix that Section 2 violation? In the state of Louisiana, where this case stems from, this has been ongoing for 3 years. It started with a map in 2022 after the 2020 census. Louisiana redistricting and creating just one black majority district, but in the initial lawsuit, black voters arguing there should be 2 black majority districts because a third of the state is African American, and so a third of the districts, 2 out of 6, should be black majority.
And I don't understand how we have to play into this little game where you live and where you vote is where your vote counts. And that's just the way it goes. Because if these politicians start moving districts around because there's too many blacks here or not enough blacks here or whatever, then it's just putting too much on the fact that we're black instead of us just being Americans and going out there and living in society or whatever. But it seems to be a very hot button issue right now. And we know the midterms are coming up and everything, but I think it's more to it than that. But for sure, they are trying to get power. They are trying to gain seats. And it's just so horrible for them to get up here and do it under the disguise that, hey, we want black people to have the right to vote for them. That's what the whole thing is. It's not that we have been voting since that act in 1965, the same way we're voting to this day. And what have we gained? Where are we in this life as a result of that act? The Democrats are winning with our support, but what are they giving back to us? What are they doing to change our circumstance? Are you guys aware the racial wealth gap in the 60s was like 6 or 7 times what between white and black people? They had about 6 or 7 times the wealth that we had back in the 60s. And it hasn't changed. It's about 6 times right now and today as we speak. So what has that act done for us? Where has we have gained anything? And if the Supreme Court comes out with a decision that is adverse to black people, it won't be the first time because the act hasn't worked for us. Maybe someone in Congress or the Congressional Black Congress while they're off doing nothing, Congressional Black Caucus, while they're not doing nothing, maybe they could sit down and draft up something and see if we can have some input. We didn't write that Voting Rights Act. I'm sorry, we didn't write that. That was written by someone else, for someone else. But it was a way to get us into the game. Like they've tricked us into believing that if somebody don't want to sell you a hamburger, you stand outside their place and you picket until they have to bow down and take your money. If they don't want your money and they don't want your business, unfortunately, who would want to force their way into someone's business, force their money into someone else's pocket? Wouldn't it be better to just go open up your own hamburger stand? You'd probably make a better hamburger than they did. But I don't understand the logic. And that's the way they have us thinking. No one else in this country reacts to rejection and being held out of things by not going and recreating it themselves, by not going out and opening business. We're the only ones who refuse to do it on our own. We gotta be a part of what they, and it's because when we go and do it on our own, they destroy it, and they know it. But it looks better when we just don't go try, give up, exasperated, just fuck it. Let's just go eat at their ice cream parlor rather than open our own. And when we have our own communities that they don't even come into, they direct who owns the businesses in our communities. Why all these Korean businesses in Compton? Why all these Hispanic businesses in Compton without a proportionate amount of black businesses in Compton? Anybody who was around in the 60s and 70s knows downtown Compton had a downtown Compton area with businesses, stationery stores and diners and clothing stores, and black owned ones. What happened? Where did that go? Why did these sections of town like downtown Compton get demolished and destroyed and rebuilt back? Are these national chains, the Rite Aids and the Denny's and the small, this is the only one in town, or this one guy over here owns 3 locations, Linwood, Compton, and Watts, or some shit like that? Nah. It's something in the air that prevents us from having everything like everyone else. Let's go further into this. I'm sure by the end of this commentary, we'll have our answer.
So that was deemed by lower courts as a Section 2 violation of the Voting Rights Act. So the state, in trying to preempt a court forcing them to use a court-drawn map, the state redrew their maps, created a second black majority district. Then a different group of non-black plaintiffs sued, arguing that the 2024 map was then racially discriminated. And so the justice is really wrestling here with the case that they started to hear last term. They heard arguments back in March, and clearly what they heard then in those hour-plus arguments wasn't quite enough. The justices didn't get enough information. So those arguing in support of the 2024 map, the most recent one, the one that was used in the 2024 election, saying that it's okay to use a little bit of race consideration when you are fixing a racial discrimination issue in Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act.
Yeah, who wrote that shit? It's okay to use a little bit of racial discretion when dealing with a racial, for a country that's not fundamentally racist, as they say, it's really hard to believe that a group of people who were enslaved in this country from before this country was a country, but enslaved in it, then freed, so to speak, and never really allowed the same opportunities, the same passion for their existence and for their ability to do good by the oppressor. They've never, ever been able to relinquish that. They've never, ever, and it goes from we don't owe you, we don't owe you, we don't owe you, to so much time has passed. It just morphs into things that seem, of course, if you're the benefactor of the riches and the backbreaking work and the land and all the things that have been handed down generationally to keep the white population in this country in the position that they're in, mostly inheritance, mostly opportunities that others don't enjoy, and that's the part I have a problem with is a country that is so against reparations, and most people who are living in the times that we're in would agree. They just appear to be just against reparations. There's nothing personal against blacks. The country just ain't for reparations. But the part of that that's not true is back when they were taking the land from the Southerners, the plantation owners, and as a reparation, giving it breaking it maybe up in sections and giving it to black folks. And they reversed that shit. They were like, oh no. And these black people were getting land. The reparations was happening. And they were like, oh, hell no. They don't deserve reparations. The reparations needs to be paid to the slave owner. They're the ones who are losing their slaves. They're the ones when everything was straightened out, everything was given back to the slave owners, former slave owners. So no one ever realized at any point that black people really needed a hand. Black people really needed some help. And I bring that up to modern times to give you an example of a deep contrast that's going on here right in front of our eyes. And people are so brainwashed into believing that we have to behave and respond a certain way that we don't look outside of those two lines when someone else does. Like the illegal immigrant situation that's going on right now. It's all out in the streets. But people are resisting arrest from federal agents, and it's not being called resisting arrest. It's being called protests, peaceful protests, by the way. And I've seen people on the ground kicking and bending their body and getting up on their knees and elbows so they don't lay flat like they're being asked to, and not being accused by the news who's reporting or by people who are looking in on this as folks resisting arrest, especially when they have an illegal immigrant in their grasp or they have to chase them down and then the person doesn't comply. And then other people are standing within feet of federal agents doing their jobs and making arrests. And I'll qualify this in a minute. But they stand back and say, hey, leave me alone. And I know my rights. It's like they went to some kind of classes or something. They all have the same rhetoric and legal jargon to say to the police to get them off of them or whatever. And they feel they're being violated when the federal agents don't act the way they're supposed to. And they don't. But as a black man, I'll qualify that, but as a black man, we could never get pulled over, put on the ground, asked to sit on the curb, exit our vehicle, or any of that stuff, and have that much to say. And there's absolutely no way no other blacks are going to come within just a few feet of police officers making an arrest with this guy giving you his undivided attention in the process of arresting you, and someone else is going to come around and have his back, be behind him, and his partners aren't going to shoot him or grab him by the neck or get him the fuck out that area or tell him, hey, you better get the fuck back. You're interfering with police work or whatever the hell they say each different time. But it's strange how with the illegal immigrants, it's not resisting. I haven't heard anybody say they're resisting anything. I hear people saying they're being illegally pulled out of cars, illegally arrested in their place of work and those type of things. So if we're going to take the laws of the United States and get out into the streets and protest and with vigor and passion, if that's what we're going to do for this group of people, and right now our voting rights, so to speak, are on the chopping block. They're talking about just trying to make things even, as if things, have been rectified by the acts like the Voting Rights Act of 1965 and things like that. Eventually, all that stuff will dissipate. The Supreme Court will come to the point where they'll say, we're good on the Civil Rights Act of 64 too. They'll just start going through that because we're allowing them to do that to us because we take our vote and we vote for who they tell us to. And then when we have black mayors taking care of illegal immigrants, some of us get a little pissed off and frustrated. Well, we took our vote and voted for who? So that he could bring in, that's the part of the problem that I have a hard time with, is that we have to absolutely think of ourselves first. Because if we don't, they won't. They pick certain blacks who can make it into these positions. Like Kamala Harris, Eric Adams, Barack Obama. They pick these folks, put them in these positions because they trust them to not do anything for us. And if they had one of them who was at risk for doing something for us that's going to change our quality of life and change our place in this country, they never make it to a position where they could do anything like that. Do you guys notice every time a major shooting happens, a mass shooting, a big protest, you look at the podium and they got usually a black mayor with a black attorney general and a black police chief, you know, and maybe one white guy up there. He might be the city manager or some shit. But I'm just saying, why are we so heavily represented when you look across this country, but none of those people in those positions, and they have black mayors associations and black police chiefs associations and all that shit. What do they talk about when they get in these groups, when they meet up annually or whatever? What are they talking about? What are they doing? They're not doing anything for us. And right now, all their focus and attention is on the Hispanics and I mean the legal immigrants, not the citizens of the country, but the illegal immigrants. And to the point of where this voting rights thing has come up, we should have taken care of this shit back in the 60s. Why are we still even talking about it? I think it's obsolete. Can someone think of something better? Can someone black write it? I mean, is that possible? Because right now, guys, it ain't looking good for us because they're up there fighting over our voting rights. And the Democrats feel like they have the right to do it and that we belong to them. We don't. We don't. Have they said what they're going to give us? Have they promised us anything? They don't have to. That's how they feel. Entitled. They don't like entitlements until they come to our vote. Then its entitlements are good for everybody. Right now, we need to hold our vote back and we need to change our tone. And this voting thing isn't that important because it hasn't gotten us anywhere from the 60s to current day. So with or without it, we'd still be in the same place at the bottom.
Those opposed against it, the state of Louisiana even arguing against its own state legislature's approved map, arguing that no, race should not play any role. It should be 100% race neutral. So this really is a very admittedly complicated case that has a lot of nuance and back and forth, but it could have major implications depending on exactly how the Supreme Court rules in this case. If the court comes down and argues that Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act maybe is unconstitutional, that could have sweeping impacts on gerrymandering and redistricting that we are already seeing some states undergo right now for partisan and political reasons. So there's a huge impact that this case could potentially have, but it all really comes down to exactly how the justices write their opinion in this case.
So, Stephanie, I know you are giving us the nutshell. But the bottom line is this is actually a case that could affect the outcome of the next election specifically.
Yeah, Captain Obvious. That's exactly why they're doing this shit. They're doing it because of the election. Everybody's posturing and scratching, and here we are right now. This is our little moment. During a whole goddamn presidential election, we didn't have one. Now, all of a sudden, it's our little moment. But we won't be out in the streets over this, and neither will they. This shit ain't that important because they feel like they got it. We can win this in court. And it's, you know what? They can violate rights, break some laws, and we'll just haul them into court and go through the process. But for this illegal immigrant thing, oh no. The courts will just tie it up and the Supreme Court won't agree with us anyway. So we're going to go around them. And we're going to fight whether it's legal or not because it's the right thing to do. It's morally right. Ain't that fucked up? And we got to get in court and get on platforms and debate and act like we got some sense instead of getting out in the streets and being pissed off that our voting rights are not only being threatened, but when they are restored, then they're being manipulated and taken from us right from underneath our fingertips, and we don't even get it because we are voting for other people to win, not for ourselves. We feel like we've come so far because they keep reminding us that we was in chains. But from chains to where we are right now in the grand scheme of things, and we have obviously elevated, but so have they. And the gap is still between us. So the only thing that's happened is times have changed. And we waiting for the people to change. That's what we need. The people just absolutely are going to have to change.
The congressional map, is that why this is so important?
Absolutely, it is. One of the attorneys today arguing in front of the court explicitly told the justices that they want this case dealt with so that there can be new congressional maps drawn for the next midterm elections in 2026. So we could see, depending on what the justices say in this case, other states take up redistricting efforts. We could see that especially in southern states that might have been more subject to Section 2 violations of the Voting Rights Act. But it also, depending on how the justices write their opinion, it could have impacts beyond redistricting. There's concerns that it could impact housing regulations. It could impact employment regulations. We've already seen.
Yeah, but why don't we get to write it if it's for us? I mean, why can't our Black Caucus say, get your hands off of this shit? This is our shit. You know, why do we need them to lead for our bill? Because they're afraid that if we wrote it ourselves, we might put something in there that they don't agree with. And then they'll be like, who let that in there? Yeah. Because it isn't written to favor us. It's written to favor them and to give us the right to vote. And that's it. And they need to get hands off and let us learn to exercise our vote properly like everyone else has. And when the odds are stacked up against you and you just can't win, you take it to the streets. You keep in your mind that morality and doing the right thing and being a human is more important than any laws of any country, because that's how they're acting. But not us. We play by the rules because we know we can end up in prison. We know we can end up dead. We know we can end up on the side of the road with a police officer who forgot to turn his camera on. We got a whole lot of shit that we have to consider, and it just seems like everybody else is living in a different reality, because we get faced with life or death situations. Becoming a citizen of the United States, is that important that they sneak into the country? That they risk their lives, that they work hard hours knowing they're being underpaid, knowing they're being taken advantage of, but they go through all this to become citizens of this country. And our voting rights as citizens of the United States are equally as important. We are citizens of this country, and our voting rights are being threatened. And we are the most loyal voting bloc in the United States. That's why we're even having this conversation, because they realize what the prize is, but they just don't want to reciprocate. They just want to get it, pluck the fruit from the tree, and then not water it. Maybe the neighbor's sprinkler will shoot over the fence and a miracle will happen, but they keep getting the fruit, but they don't want to water it. And folks, we have come to a point as Black people collectively where we don't need reporters to get on here and tell us something that we already know. We already know. We know the answer. But we are tired of the rejection. We are trying to pretend that these people are our friends when they're not. And just pick out different segments of time and look at the numbers. They only like to look at the numbers when it favors their argument or when it benefits them, and they're telling you 0.5% of a crime drop in the middle of a ghetto is like something you can really feel, and it ain't. But we can do time checks over 5-year, 10-year, 20-year periods of the progress that Black people have made as far as making up ground when it comes to being closer to equal economically to white people. That's one of them things we need to start talking about, debating universally as Black people. If you're in prison, talk about that. If you're in college, talk about that. If you're in the military, talk about that. No matter what institution in this country we end up in, as a neighbor, let your neighbors know You're a good person, just like they're a good person. But if they don't understand you, you might have to explain yourself to them without it getting to a point where there's conflict or friction or people think not understanding. It's a lack of understanding. Everybody got a story and it need to be told. And the best person to tell it is you and not someone else. And that's why our voting rights need to be written by us. I'm sure it would look different than them writing it for us. I know they really do believe they got it and they know what we need and want, but they believe different than what we do. And they just won't let go, and they're going to have to let go of us so that we can grow and we can flourish and we can do well and have the same opportunities that they are fighting for these illegal immigrants to have. We're not going to stand in line and wait until June when the Supreme Court drops the boom. We need to be in the streets. Now y'all want to get in the streets. This is a reason to get in the streets. And to take it one step further and not just get in the streets for our voting rights, but get in our streets and make it known that we don't only want to vote, we want the opportunity to decide what we're voting for and have an outcome, and not just open-endedly vote and pray that someone throws you a pill. We couldn't even rely on Barack Obama to do that. And that's a big part of what we're going through now. Barack Obama thought that health care was going to be, and now Trump don't. So, oh no, health care is going to go up. It already went up. Anybody who remembers between, 2008 and 2011, some companies were trying hard to keep people on those nice Blue Cross plans. And Obama was dead set on righting the ship and balancing it out, where the poor could have the same kind of health care that the rich had, which ended up being Kaiser. Some well-paid employees around the country, some managers had to get off their plan and go to Kaiser or a group like that in order to have health care that they could afford. Because they were like getting crazy, $400 and $800 a month. Y'all remember that during the Obama shit happened to me? And I was like, wow, some unions even quit offering health care. They just shut theirs down. It was too expensive. And they fought for that. That's not progress. What is that? And who was Obama helping? He's putting everybody in the United States by law on a health care plan. Who's he helping? Who's he helping doing that? And we're so quick to spend taxpayer money on illegal immigrants and not just saying, well, you know what, you guys, we can't give you free health care, but we can supplement it. The government's going to supplement it with some of this money that we just frivolously throw around. And when it's one thing we want to do, we do it. And when it's something we don't want to do, we don't got no money for it. Like, comment, share, and please subscribe. And I'll see you on the next Black Popcorn.